So when we look at this, y'all, and you see where it says the French, you see their flag, but I thought their flag was the tricolor. What's up with that? The tricolor is post-revolution, right? This is the old French flag with what looks like, does any football team ever use that symbol? The Saints, thank you. Okay. Man, when I was a Saints fan back in the day, they were so bad. How bad were they? That we called them the Aints. Because they ain't going to go anywhere in the playoffs. But anyway, this is the fleur de lis, the lily flower, right? And it is a symbol of the Bourbons, or the Bourbon Kings. And that's what they had until then. Now, obviously, people from France are known as, if you look at the very top of your chart here, right? You look at the very top of the chart, what does it say? They're known as French. That's obvious, but I like just to make sure you guys know and don't call them Francians or something. Okay, let's read underneath B. French colonial efforts involved relatively few Europeans. So they didn't send over many people. In fact, at the time of the French Indian War, there are about 2 million British people, and I think only like 65,000 Frenchmen. And the trouble is, y'all, the French were blessed and cursed by geography at the same time. Their area spreads out over like the entire continent, all the way from Canada to the Rocky Mountains. So it was just too much territory for so few people. So a key thing to remember, y'all, is the French didn't send over many people, and most of them they did send were men. So you're going to get the same issue that we saw with the Spanish yesterday, which is there aren't French women, so there's going to be Indian women involved, okay? Now, very, very important to understand, whereas the English and Spanish both had the numbers, right, to crush, I hate to say it that way, but to crush the Indians and make them do their bidding, the French didn't have those numbers. So as a result, the French are going to have to work with the Indians rather than work on them. So they rely on trade alliances. They made deals with the Indians, and they built up diplomatic relationships. So their relationship is going to be a whole lot better. And donde está? Oh, here it is. Okay. I don't know, was this class or the other? But I told them that I did have this beaver at home that I would kill and skin to bring to class for everybody to see what a beaver pelt is. And here it is. This is what it was all about for the French. You know, this is actually from 1968, y'all. My dad got this when I was 5 years old when we lived in Canada. So this is a beaver hat. I'm going to pass it around. If any of you, and don't feel bad, this beaver is long been dead, okay? Somebody made it out of it back when that was cool. Today, we don't like to do that to animals. So just kind of feel this. And this was one of the coolest, most popular things in. And they would even use this fur on top hats. So it wasn't just the cool Ben Franklin hats. It was this. This is what the French were about. Easy to remember. French fur. F and F. There you go. Beaver hat. That is what the key to the French thing was. And, of course, other products for export. So the French, y'all, I hate to say this. I love the French. And, I mean, I've been to France lots of times. I like it. But they kind of have, let's just say, a checkered military history. It used to be if you typed in French military victories on Google search, what did you get? Did you mean French military defeats? Yeah. And that's why on The Simpsons we get this famous line.
Bonjour, you cheese-eating surrender monkeys.
Yeah, there we go. Okay, so anyway, y'all, here you see the key concept, right? Relatively few Frenchmen come over. And one of the big mistakes the French are going to make is they don't send their religious dissidents. If they've been smart in this, like the English, and pushed out pilgrims and Puritans, if the French had pushed out the Huguenots or let them leave, that would have been great. They could have gotten a lot of people over here. You know, you think of the genius of the English. They're like, okay, people who don't want to be here, all right, the Pilgrims, the Puritans, the Catholics. Why don't we have them leave? They can go over to this America place, and they can start making money for us. Pretty awesome. What you need? Oh, you got the hat. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, everybody got it? Check out the hat. Here's the hat. Pretty doggone awesome, huh? I mean, that is smooth. You got to admit it, right? I mean, poor little critter. But anyway, there you go. I think his name was Bucky. Oh, sorry. Okay. Little joke there. Okay, I'll be here all week. Okay. Now, so what was the area of the French? It is this blue area, no? Area blue. I speak French, no? Oui, c'est vrai, I speak French. Okay. When I was in France, y'all, I think everything I said came out to j'aime manger le papier de toilette. I like to eat toilet paper. Okay. But you notice everything sounds good in French. It always sounds sexy. You can say you hate people and like, oh, man, that sounded so great. Whereas in German, if you even say I love you, it comes out like you're getting ready to invade somebody. All right. Anyway, so bleu is the French. Look at that area, y'all. I mean, and in some ways, it went all the way over here to the Rockies because basically everything drained by the Mississippi River, y'all, which includes the Missouri River coming through here, y'all, was claimed by the French. Okay. LaSalle came here, died in Texas, near Nacogdoches, we think, somewhere over there. But this whole area, the Ohio River, all the way down to Mississippi. They called this Louisiana, right? Because it was named after one of their many Louis Kings. Looks like Louis, but they pronounce it Louis. Notice it's up here. So what's the area? It was along the St. Lawrence River here, okay? And it's along the Mississippi River here. If you look, St. Lawrence River, as I said, right all along here, they had the Great Lakes. They had the Mississippi and even rivers like the Missouri that drained into it. So their area, y'all, is by far, in the current United States, is by far the biggest. When you compare it to the English, y'all, just had this little sliver here that went to the Appalachians along the Atlantic seaboard. And then notice, too, you had some disputed area here, modern-day Newfoundland, and they don't show it, but what's going to lead to the French and Indian War is the Ohio country right here is also going to be disputed. Okay, so make sure you're aware where that is. Why is that significant? As I said, it's significant because it is such a large area and they only have a handful of Frenchmen. Now, it was okay in some sense because the Great Lakes, y'all, acted like a highway. You know, you need to move, man, you can go by the rivers, or by the Great Lakes. You can come down the Mississippi. You can go along the Ohio River. So this mobility meant that they spread out a lot. But when they go to war with the English, y'all, in 1754, the French Indian War, the problem's going to be you can't possibly defend all that land, right? The British could find them and strike them wherever they wanted to. Now, the war went okay for the first 4 years for the French. But then when the British / English got serious, y'all, if they hadn't had the Indians on their side, the French Indians, right, for the French and Indian War, it would not have gone so well. It would not have lasted as well. So like we said here, now there's some consequences of this. As I mentioned, a lot more contact with Native Americans. Remember, the English, their contact with the Indians is just along the coast, right? And the Spanish is just out here in the arid deserts and a little bit along the coast, right? Also, though, it's going to, because they're so spread out, it's going to lead to their defeat by the English. So make sure you're aware of the consequences of its geography. Now, what's the deal with the French? Just like the Spanish, they were seriously serious. Okay, they were serious about converting Indians or natives to Christianity. Okay, they truly, really were. They wanted to make sure. But unlike the Spanish, who had the men behind them, the conquistadors with guns and swords to force conversion, right, and to defend their missionaries, the French didn't. And I have tremendous admiration for these people. These missionaries, right? You guys know what a missionary is, right? A person who goes out to proselytize and spread his or her religion. I mean, it takes a lot of guts to do that, to try to change people's minds. And these men were called black robes by the Spanish because, of course, by the Indians, because they wore these black robes. And they would go out there and do this. And you know what? Sometimes it didn't end very well. Like this poor guy here, y'all, he is getting toasted. He is literally being burned to death. Some were boiled alive, burned alive, tortured, and you see them doing that. Now, that didn't happen in all cases, but it happened enough. I mean, there was literally like a book of martyrs of these kind of guys who had that happen. Okay? Cool effect, Bob. Now, as I said, the main goal was to trade with the Indians for the beaver hats. Now, the one I passed out to you guys, like I said, was a fur one here, like a little kind of mini hat. But they even used this beaver fur, y'all, on top hats like that. And that was super popular. I mean, you know how like sneakers still to this day are big, big deals? It was hats in those days. You wanted to show who you were. If you were a guy, you had the cool hats. And if you had the beaver fur hat, that was even cooler. So yeah, poor old Bucky. Okay. Now, the thing is too, social development. What do you put under social development? Well, Nouvelle France had very few real settlements. There are exceptions, like Montreal. I lived there in 1968 when my dad got this hat. I was there for my 5th birthday. Okay. Quebec, or as we say in America, Quebec City, and Saint Louis, and Nouvelle Orleans, New Orleans, are exceptions. Okay. And so those, Quebec City for a while, took Montreal, which literally means Mount Royal. Okay. You guys know that if you know some Spanish, Real. In French, it's similar, right? Now, this is a key. Unlike the English, these French men came over, right, as French men. Rarely did they bring their families, okay? Instead, they relied on marrying Indian women. And in fact, I gotta say, y'all, there were a lot of these Frenchmen, these so-called coureurs de bois, these runners of the woods, these traders, they often, y'all, they often had 2 wives, I gotta say. They had the wife back in France, or maybe back in Montreal or Quebec, and then they had their Indian wife. Okay? So kind of like one for here and one for when I go back home. I hate to say it, but they did that. Now, like I said, unlike the Spanish who could force themselves on the Indian women, right? The Frenchmen had to, well, you know, just use that French language that is so sexy. But I mean, they had to work differently. Now, as I said, a big mistake that we can now recognize in history is, with the exception of that Fort Caroline I told you guys about yesterday, they did not send their dissidents, their unhappy people, right? The English are going to send pilgrims and Puritans and Catholics and Quakers, the people that England didn't want and the people who didn't want England. The Huguenots y'all went to Fort Caroline. Most of them were massacred. End of story. Had they done that, they might have been able to get the people that would allow them to hang on, but they did not do it. So it was very, very Catholic. Okay, political development. Now, just like in England, it's going to take a while for France to really get it together to come over here. Why? They were having some serious religious wars in France between those Huguenots, between those Protestants and Catholics. And it's going to take a while for that to settle down. Now, the same thing's going to happen in England with the English colonies, the British colonies. They have an English civil war going on. And, you know, when you get involved in a war, you know, you don't have a whole lot of time for this colony over there. So as a result, they didn't pay much attention to the colonies over here because they were too busy killing each other in the name of God over there. Now, much like the Spanish, remember the Spanish have a viceroy? What did they have in La Nouvelle France? They had a gouverneur general, and he ruled like the viceroy, and he was appointed by the king or the king's advisors. There was not the democracy that the English would have. No representative assembly, no houses of burgesses, no little New England town meetings. The people had no voice, right? This guy was picked. This guy ran things. The governor general. Okay? They didn't even have juries, y'all. And this is going to be an important issue later on with something called the Quebec Act during the Revolution. Because when the English accepted Canada after the French Indian War, they let them keep that. They let them have no representative assembly. Now, a jury, y'all, is like a mini democracy. When you guys get older, you guys will get to be on a jury, and it's great. You probably won't do it during college, because during college you guys can get out of jury duty. But when you're a jury, y'all, you have 12 men and women, maybe a few alternates, and you have to decide if a person's guilty or innocent or whatever, and you have to debate and you have to talk. I've been on multiple juries, including a murder jury, which was pretty yucky, okay? Lasted over a week. But a jury system, y'all, is democracy. If you don't have a jury, who decides your fate? A judge, right? A judge who just listens to the case and uses his or her experience and decides it. And you do have the right as an American to decide you want to judge as opposed to a jury. But this is one thing the British deny us ultimately, and it helps lead to the revolution. And it's one thing we include in our Constitution. In our Bill of Rights, as long as a civil case involves more than $20, you have the right to a jury. And obviously, anytime your freedom is threatened, in other words, you might go to jail, you have a right to a jury of your peers. People like you who maybe can understand your situation better. And something very, very different, y'all, they had an official religion. Just like the Spanish, they didn't even have to announce it. It was just accepted. Everybody here is going to be Catholic, right? The same thing there, except they actually announced Catholicism would be the state religion. Now, what does it mean to say it's a state religion? I mean, it's not like they're going to kill you if you're not in the official religion, but it means they literally take tax dollars from you to pay for the church, to pay for the priest, to do all that kind of stuff. And in many cases, if you want a job with the government, you better be Catholic. Okay? Now, the English will not have that in our colonies. Okay? Now, some of the colonies themselves will choose to have it. But if you guys remember the opening words of our Bill of Rights, that you cannot have basically a state religion in the United States, a national religion. It's just not allowed. We want people to have more freedom of choice in what they believe. But the French, that was an important distinction. All right, a little bit more complicated here. The French, by far, have the best relationship with Native Americans. I mean, much better than you know who, right? The English. The English, y'all, just took the land, okay? If the Indians fought them, kill them, push them away. The Spanish, same kind of thing as well, too. But the French, y'all, they had by far the best relationship. Why do you think they married why do you think they married Indian women so much? Because they didn't have French women, okay? Intermarriage, very, very common, okay? These so-called coureurs de bois, these runners of the woods, these traders that went deep into the forest, these guys often married, okay? And what was the deal? How did they get this fur that, is such a big deal? They got it, y'all, by trading tools, by, iron tools, steel tools. The Indians, all they had, y'all, was stuff made out of stone, which broke easily and took a long time to make. They traded beautiful cloth. Indians wore animal skin, right? Now, suddenly, you could buy cotton. You could buy, various other things. And Indians love that. Guns. Obviously, Native Americans did not have guns until the French and the Dutch began to trade for them. British were kind of smart on that. The Spanish were kind of smart on it too, y'all. Like, hey, we don't want to be giving our future enemy, potential enemy, guns. But not the French. They're like, hey, we want these furs. We want Bucky so bad, we'll give them guns that they can later use to kill us. And sadly, y'all, and this has been a scourge of Native Americans for a long time, alcohol, right? Alcohol often would be used to ply the Indian chiefs and whatever to get them to make bad deals for them and that kind of stuff. And a very important thing to understand, in case I don't have a chance to bring it up again, although your video, The Era of Colonization, did this well the other day, this breeds dependence, right? If somebody is making your tools for you, making your clothes, your guns, and all that stuff for you, after a generation or two, your kids don't know how to do it, right? And now you're in trouble because you're going to have to get this stuff. Now, Indians don't have money. Remember, there's not a lot of gold or silver where the French are. So all Indians really had to offer y'all, I hate to say, was fur. And as a result, Indians very quickly begin to deplete and kill all the buckies. And when all the buckies in your hood are gone, you're going to go over to another Indian tribe's hood and start taking their buckies. And before it's all over, you're having wars. There's actually a series of wars, y'all, between Indian tribes called the Beaver Wars. And that's going to lead to some problem. Now, just like the Spanish have a group called mestizo, there were enough French men and Indian women having children, offspring, that they actually have a word for it. The English don't have a word for it because they don't have it happening enough. But the French did, and it was called métis. Métis. You use that, that'll be impressive, y'all. Now, as I said, one big problem with the French giving them or trading for all this stuff is a lot of the Indians in those areas began to forget the old ways. They begin to forget how to make their own stuff. And tools don't last forever. Clothes and guns don't last forever. Alcohol definitely doesn't last forever. And so before long, like I said, they had to keep hunting. Now, the Native Americans, y'all, were well treated and respected by the Indians. Rather than using force to get what they want, the French gave them gifts. It traded with them. In a lot of ways, it respected their ways. Now, does this mean the French are better people, that Jacques is better than Juan, is better than John? No. What it means is the French, and I hate to say this, I love the French, but the thing is, they didn't have the power to force the Indians. And remember how I mentioned yesterday, if you want to get that complexity point, one of the things you can do is don't just give differences and similarities. Give reasons for it. They treated the French treated the Indians differently. Why? Because they didn't have the numbers like the Spanish and the English to force them to their will. So this is why they treated them better. Now, the other thing too here, y'all, is the fact that the French made alliances with Indians. Their best friends were the Algonquin group, known as the Hurons, okay, up there from the Great Lakes. And this is an AP word you need to know. Know this word, autonomy. That means political independence. I guess next time you're talking to your parents and you're upset that they control everything about you, just say, well, Mom, Dad, what I'd really like is some more autonomy. And they're like, man, I got a smart kid. Okay. What that means is you would like to have some independence, more say. And so the Indians, y'all, were pretty much allowed just to do their own thing. And the French would just come into town or come into the village and do that. They didn't replace the Indians because they didn't have the numbers to replace the Indians. They didn't, just push them all out or everything like the English would do. They didn't take over the land and start growing crops all on it like the English and Spanish did. So very, very different. Now, very key event here that I think is important and people often forget. The first Frenchman to really get here was a man by the name of Samuel Champlain. There was another guy before, but Champlain shows up here, y'all. And he absolutely ticks off the Iroquois, even to this day. And it's going to have big consequences. And little did he know it, but that shot that he made that day is probably going to doom the French Empire. So what happened? Well, when Champlain showed up, the Huron Indians were excited. Why? This guy had some really awesome weapons. They could use him and his weapons against their enemy, the powerful Iroquois. So Champlain, wanting to get along with the Indians, went out with them one day, and they met on the lake that is actually today named Lake Champlain up in New York. So what happened is, y'all, Champlain was there. He had his arquebus, an early type of gun. He had put extra bullets. In those days, y'all, they had these round bullets. He stuffed it with a couple of bullets instead of just one. And in those days, y'all, you didn't have it worked by, you had to light a fuse, and you kept this fuse kind of burning. And when you wanted to fire, you touched the fuse, the burning fuse, to the powder, which then ignited the powder in the gun. It wasn't like bullets today that are self-contained with the shell and everything. So anyway, y'all, Champlain has his fuse lit. And here come the Iroquois on boats. They got their chiefs right in front. Here comes Champlain with the Hurons. They're passing each other, and they come up to each other. Champlain, y'all, lights it. He blows away a couple of the chiefs, okay? Right there, the Iroquois lose their leaders, okay? And then the Hurons descend onto the Iroquois and begin killing them and attacking them. It's a great victory for the Hurons that Champlain has got them. And I have an account by Champlain, y'all, and I won't read it to you, but I'll give you the worst parts of it. What ends up happening is this one Indian Iroquois gets captured, and he's being tortured. And they actually are pulling out his tendons. They are lighting his fingers and stuff. They cut off, well, let's just say something near and dear men. And this guy's still alive while they're doing all of this. And Champlain is just watching in horror, like, oh my gosh, they must really hate these people. And he feels sorry for the Iroquois guy. So finally, he comes up with his pistol. And of course, he's got to do the kill shot, which means you got to turn it this way, right? So he turns his pistol this way, and he kills the guy, thinking that's it. Oh no, not then. The Hurons then slit the dude's belly open, take out his intestines, set him on fire, cut out his heart, and eat it. They're like, man, pretty serious stuff. Now I'm going to show you a little video here. We'll turn out the lights. And this is from a movie called Black Robe. And I'm going to show you kind of how the French acted with the Indians. Imagine if this were a Spanish priest or an English priest, how different it would be. Let me go ahead and play this for y'all. Somebody hit the lights back there? Giselle, maybe? If you know the words, just sing along. Together with French traders, the coureur de bois. They're meeting with the Hurons. Okay. Here comes one of the French representatives. He's got his little medal from the French Governor General. There's the Huron chief. There's the black robes, the priest.
These are our fathers.
It's pretty good French.
They are soldiers of heaven. They left their friends and their country to show you the way to paradise.
Hey, now he translates.
Chomina, I commend to your care Father Lafort,
So he's distributing the various black
who is
robes to
journeying
the
into
different
the
groups.
land of the Hurons. Love and honor him. Guard him well.
Now notice this. What are the French giving them, y'all, to take these priests? They're giving them gifts, and you'll see what's in the gifts here. See tools, right? Steel tool, and he's like, ooh, I want that particular chisel. Hook me up with that axe. Ooh, that's a nice knife. Some nice, like, kind of jewelry and things. They said Spanish didn't bother giving them gifts. English only gave gifts if they had to compete
Look
with
at
the
him,
French.
dressed like a savage chieftain. We're not colonizing the Indians, they're colonizing us.
Not me, they're not. I'm not becoming one of those wild woodsmen. In one more year, I'm going back to France.
Are you? Are any of us? If the winter doesn't kill us, the Indians might. If they don't, it could be the English. So keep your faith, and may death find you with God in mind.
Benedicat vos, omnipotens Deus, Pater, Filius,
Father, Son,
Spiritus
and
Sanctus.
Holy Spirit.
Amen. Amen.
Machito!
And of course, one of the great inventions that the Native Americans had were those canoes that you saw. Much lighter, could travel everywhere. And of course, they would take them out to the various areas. You see some of the priests would go out there to various areas of the Hurons to proselytize and give their missionary work.
Dominus vobiscum.
Okay, so much less of a footprint. That's the word we use these days. The French had, right? They didn't push the Indians away. They didn't take the territory. They just didn't have the numbers, y'all, to do what the English and what the Spanish would do. All right. Now, like I said, the priests were they had some success. I say much, but they didn't have the success, say, of the Spanish. Now, a lot of Native Americans and a lot of Canadians today of Indian descent, they call them First Nations up there, a lot of them did convert. But sadly, there was a great cost. Those priests that you saw often were carrying European diseases. And when they began to work with the Indians, mysteriously, a lot of Indians began to die. So they were kind of vectors of disease as well as faith, I hate to say. But that video, y'all, from that movie does a good job of like kind of showing the interaction between the French and them. So when you guys think, if you have to write about that, remember that. Okay. We already saw that. We don't need to see that again, but I like the canoes. All right, slavery. Well, like I said, they did not enslave the Indians. And you can put this as a little note maybe on the bottom of the page because I don't have the slavery column for the French. They did not enslave Indians. Wow, they must be better people. Well, no, they just didn't have the number of people to do it, right? Like the French and the Spanish did. They don't bring over lots of black slaves either, okay, up in the French territories, at least up in the north. Now, Louisiana is going to be different, okay? But in Canada, maybe not so much. So like the Spanish have a legacy, well, there is an incredible legacy of the French, even today. Northern Maine, a lot of us don't think of Maine as being French, but it was for a long time. A lot of people still speak French in Northern Maine. Of course, Louisiana, the state, right? New Orleans, the southern part of Louisiana, y'all, is very, very French. A lot of our place names, St. Louis, for example, Baton Rouge, right? And of course, Cajuns. You know, Cajuns, y'all, were Frenchmen who came down from what is today called Nova Scotia, or they're Acadians. And look at that, man. I'm going to be making some gumbo tonight, y'all. All right, Mr. D's going to stop right there for you guys. How much time we got left? It's homeroom day, so it's a little shorter. Looking at our schedule over here. Well, that is neat. Thanks for saying that. Yeah, I love, like I said, part of me, like I said, has a heart in Louisiana, so for sure. Okay, 8:07 is homeroom. What time we got? All right, that's close enough. You guys can chill for a few minutes. And I appreciate that. As I said, I will be posting for you guys the Dutch, which is pretty short. Dutch is like 20 minutes, and the British. And then that'll give me, if you guys get that done for me this weekend, that will give me 3 days to get the colonial life, colonial society done for you guys for your district test next Friday. Okay. I'll probably also give you the SAQ that day as well that was on the last test because you're now able to answer it because you know the different types of colonization. All right. Well, cool.